Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today we're talking melee DPS, because yes, it's that time again, the best time, the most excitingest time, when a new expansion is about to pop and cover our grateful little faces in new zones, new features, a new elf they just made up, and of course, a whole heap of new class changes for players to get to grips with too. And you know, it's about this sort of time when we, the player base, begin to ask that eternal question, seriously, what is actually going on with my spec though? And that's a pretty fair question to be asking really, whether you want to know what the new expansion has in store for your long-time main in a post-artifact weapon world, whether you're a raid leader who wants to get clued up on the new strengths and weaknesses of your team, whether you need to find out which class you should re-roll to take your rightful place at the top of the BfA damage meters where you belong, just like you've always deserved, or whether you just want to give it one last try trying to work out exactly what a survival hunter actually does. Well, my friends, this is the video for you, because we're going to take a look at every single melee spec in the game and tell you what you can expect from them in Battle for Azeroth. It goes without saying here that when it comes to numbers, Blizzard are obviously still tuning them, and to be honest, they're essentially not going to stop tuning them for the next 2 years until BfA is over and they start tuning for 9.0. But game director Ian Hazzikostas has said that numbers is all they're going to be doing from now on. No spec is going to be getting any big mechanical reworks until the first major patch of the expansion at the earliest, which means we know how these specs play, we know how they feel, we know what they're supposed to do. So join us as we get up close and personal, oh I missed this, with melee DPS classes in World of Warcraft, Battle for Azeroth, okay? Go, 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 go. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some specs in BfA which are pretty much unrecognisable from their Legion iterations, but overall there's significantly fewer examples of Blizzard's burn this shit down and start from scratch approach that defined Legion. And Windwalker monks are a great example of a class that gives players important changes that give you something new while still keeping the core of a great spec. And Windwalker is a great spec. Windwalker's combo strikes mastery means that their damaging abilities do more damage if it's a different ability to the one they've just used. A genius system which encourages a really natural weaving of attacks together and captures that martial arts master fantasy perfectly. And in BfA, there's a couple of new abilities to fit into this dance of DPS death too. Leg Sweep is now baseline, and the Fist of the White Tiger talent more than fills the hole left behind by the outgoing artifact trait. Look, anything that gives me another punch that I can weave into that rotation is fine by me, because my monk loves to punch. And those punches are smooth, varied, and they hit hard. Windwalker's going to be just fine in single target fights, but it's when they get a tightly packed group of baddies in front of them that they really shine. Because Fists of Fury and a well set up spinning crane kick is still just crazy OP in those situations. A good monk player is going to eat Mythic Plus for breakfast, and like quite a late breakfast where you're really hungry, so you eat like unusually fast. And of course, monks are still the most mobile class in the game too. Hey, you need to be somewhere? You can roll there, torpedo there, transcend there, or lust there, but you're getting there, that's the main thing. So what's the bad news? Well, Energizing Elixir has become considerably easier to use optimally, and hit combo only stacks 6 times now, both of which could be seen as Blizzard lowering the skill ceiling on Windwalkers somewhat. And it's true, it would be a real shame if hit combo wasn't the best talent in the majority of situations, but I don't think there's really too much to worry about here. This is still a spec that really rewards the best players. It's fast, it's smooth, it's instinctive, and it seems built with modern World of Warcraft in mind. What is not to love about the Windwalker monk? Retribution Paladins were Marmite in Legion. Some players find it overly ponderous and simple, just as many genuinely enjoy its gameplay of building and spending holy power in a very linear fashion. But whichever side you're on, there's one thing you cannot deny. Retribution is one of the most pleasingly predictable DPS specs in the game right now, and in a world where RNG is quickly becoming a dirty word among the player base, that should be high praise indeed. Also, it's amazing what you'll put up with when you get to run around with the actual Ashbringer for an expansion, you know? In Battle for Azeroth, Ret Paladins continue with that same predictable playstyle, so it's unlikely to win any of the haters over. But Blizzard have made some important changes which seem designed to free Retribution from its lightbound shackles by closing some windows. So Judgment now only increases the damage of the first holy power spender used on the target, which makes target swapping easier because you're not stuck in that mini DPS window. And since that and Consecration now award holy power, Blizz are clearly working to smooth out Ret damage even more over the course of a fight. Yes, that's right, they're making Ret even more predictable DPS DPS-wise. They've even brought back maybe most controversial talent in Paladin history, Inquisition, as a 100% uptime alternative to Crusade. Legion Paladin was defined by this one DPS cooldown talent to an almost comical degree, so anything that helps them kick their Crusade habit has got to be good news, because Paladins should be known for their versatility. Ret still brings more utility to the table than any other DPS spec, whether it's with heals, slows, stuns, or blessings, and they should be celebrated for that, at least until the new Bard class gets introduced next expansion and we get a proper support DPS anyway. There are some question marks over AOE, but generally most Ret players are pretty happy, and the overall feeling is that they have a better spec than Legion, so you can't argue with that. And so to Enhancement Shaman, which might just be the polar opposite to Retribution, because here is a spec that is fast, chaotic, and incredibly RNG dependent, but my goodness, if you don't have fun playing Enhancement, there is something wrong, because this shit is glorious. Enhancement actually finished Legion in a pretty good place, so players won't be too sad to hear that the spec retains that very simple playstyle of building Maelstrom to spend on, well, 2 different abilities, but only one really, so basically how much DPS you end up doing is going to have a lot to do with how many of those sweet, sweet Storm Strike procs you get, which can obviously be infuriating when you inevitably don't get any at all just when you need them, but feels amazing when you get a whole ton lining up all at once. Now, that's not to say that Blizzard haven't made changes though. After all, what tweaks would you make to a spec that relies on random procs of one awesome ability? Why, you make that one awesome ability even more awesome, of course. Stormbringer procs now make Storm Strike free instead of just half price, which is like squeezable bacon. They've taken one cool thing and they've just made it cooler. It's a frankly outrageous way to deal with a spec that has peaks and troughs. Don't even it out, just make the peaks much more enjoyable, because when you're up there, you'll forget about the bad times. And they get away with it because the rotation is so smooth, even if your damage numbers won't always be. And don't let all this distract you from the fact that, like all Shaman, Enhancement brings some very useful utility with its totems, and especially now Tremor Totem is back baseline. Is there a problem with AOE? Maybe. Enhancement is a main target and cleave AOE spec, which isn't perfect in these days of Mythic Plus. But on the plus side, Crash Lightning is still the best looking ability in the game, bar none. And that's got to count for something, right? Well, it counts plenty for me. Oh, I love it so much. Frost Deathknight looks to be one of those specs that is likely to get tweaked a bit before launch, unfortunately, which is annoying, partly because, well, it makes my video look silly, but mostly because at the moment I write this, they've just done something very good that I don't want them to change. Frost DK is all about the burst damage. It's one of the burstiest specs in the game, with a fun, nimble, lightly procky rotation based around those big, bad Breath of Sindragosa windows, or at a pinch, Obliteration windows. And unlike Retribution Paladins and Crusade, this is one damage window Blizz are flinging wide open, doubling down on its importance and looking to find ways of giving players more options within that window. So Legion legendary effect Cold Heart is now a talent, which will help, but the really big news is Pillar of Frost. In Legion, this is the definition of a boring but really strong ability, giving a flat strength buff on a short cooldown. Blizz scrapped the ability entirely for BfA, but brought it back in the latest beta build, and its new iteration is a beauty. A strength buff that gets stronger for every runic power spent, which is great. It refines the art of the Frost DK burst window even more and makes it frankly a much more interesting spec than it has any right to be. So assuming that this new Pillar of Frost is in place for BfA, Frost DKs are going to be having a really good time of it as far as I'm concerned. Unholy is one classy spec. I mean, not the fantasy of it, obviously. The fantasy is all pus and sores and boils and rotting flesh is hideous, but the way it plays is exquisite. One of the most underrated specs in the game, and it may have just got better in Battle for Azeroth. So Unholy has a really satisfying builder-spender rotation, which sees players applying sores, literal festering boils, to their targets, and then bursting those sores for the good damage fun times. It's solid, it's just a bit methodical, and when it goes off, it's really stupid and fun, and this process has actually been made even more stable for the new expansion. You can now apply a maximum of 6 sores, down from 8, and Festering Strike only applies 2 to 3 sores at a time, which makes the whole rotation more predictable. A good thing in a spec built around what is essentially careful crafting and setting up, and really good news for the Unholy opener as well. Add in the fact that Unholy is one of the few specs that gets to keep its artifact ability as standard, and I'm happy, you're happy, the ghouls are happy, everyone's happy. But that's not even the best news for Unholy. The problem with this spec is how long it takes all that lovely, pussy, scabby damage to ramp up, which has made it a rubbish choice for Mythic Plus before, but no more. The best quality of life and fun improvement is Epidemic being given a runic power cost, which is massive. It's spammable AOE, boys! It's the runic spender we all wanted. Go spread some filth, DKs. Now, it's pretty obvious what the best thing about feral druids are: the new cat forms! But I mean, gameplay-wise, there's something pleasingly old school about this class. You know what you're gonna get with feral. Like cool new cat forms, even though that's not even a cat. I don't know what that is, but it's still awesome. But also, the rotation. Feral is a management spec that excels at single target. With some burst AOE and sustained cleave, it's all about maintaining those dots, which now scale with haste, by the way, thanks very much Blizzard. Keeping that balance between bleeds and direct damage cooldowns, and being almost the only class in the game where snapshotting is still a thing, like it's Wrath or something, except it's better than Wrath because there were no disco cats in Wrath, and now there are disco cats, so you know, that's progress. Actually, I joke about snapshotting, but Tiger's Fury's damage buff not dropping off from your dots is a genuine selling point of this spec. It's what lets your feral out DPS the ranged in movement-heavy raid encounters, and kind of what stops cats being essentially nerfed rogues. But a well-played feral druid is a thing of beauty and precision, to the extent that I always thought this was the spec that they should have called balance. And anyway, can a rogue do this? No, exactly. 1-0 feral druids. Oh, speaking of rogues though. Ah, the Rogue. 3 specs of pure, dirty, melee DPS goodness, at least one of which is almost guaranteed to be god tier at any one time. And even though Feint got that nerf everyone knew it would, Rogues still have the kind of utility that's always going to mean they have a spot on the team. So the question is not why Rogue, but which Rogue? Assassination is the sustain Rogue in Battle for Azeroth. It's a generally slower playstyle, applying poisons and bleeds and nurturing those little babies over the course of a fight, while occasionally bleeding them out for big fat deeps. And they've got some shiny new improvements in BfA too, like new mastery Potent Assassin, which increases poison and bleed damage. And this is actually a really big deal because it gives you a lot more flexibility in your build than you're used to. You don't have to choose to gear for poison or bleeds. You can have both, child. You can have both. At low gear levels, this spec is slow, like really slow, like waiting for a new Joanna Newsom album slow. But slow and steady wins the race, and BfA Assassination is definitely in it for the long game. Outlaw is the rogue for people who don't really like rogues, because seriously, what even is the Outlaw rogue now? Well, it's not a combat rogue, okay? Let's get that clear. It's a swashbuckling, rum-drinking, dice-rolling, pistol-shooting pirate rogue who, oh cool, look, Kingsbury is back. I always loved that on my combat rogue. No, only Outlaw. Garr! Outlaw got a bad reputation in Legion for being an RNG spec, which is kind of understandable considering its main gameplay mechanic was literally rolling some dice to see what buffs you'd get. But that was a little bit unfair by the end of the expansion, when a lot of the most obnoxious elements of Roll the Bones had been reined in a bit, and if you really can't stand it, you can always go slice and dice for more predictable results. But I'm not being facetious about that title, because once it gets going, BfA Outlaw does not feel like a rogue spec, and I mean that in a good way, because it's really, really good fun, you know. It's fast, it's smooth, because energy regen is no issue at all, and even at its most random, the numbers seem pretty steady. The question with Outlaw is not roll the bones or slice and dice, it's actually, are you using Blade Flurry or not? Because Outlaw has a few interesting, different builds which can see it equipped for single target, kind of, cleave, or AOE, which means Outlaw is also your go-to dungeon rogue. Still not sold? Well, it's got grappling hook as a baseline ability. Basically, Outlaw is a winner. Yeehaw! Oh no, that's not pirate, is it? Oh, never mind. Subtlety is the ebb and flow rogue, built around those short burst windows when it can use its stealth abilities and really lay the hurt, proper ninja style. And it is undeniably fun jumping around in and out of stealth. The good news for Subtlety in BfA is that Symbols of Death is off the global cooldown, thank goodness, and Find Weakness is back, just like you asked. See, you got what you wanted, and you're happy about that, so you definitely can't complain when I tell you that Death from Above is just a PvP talent now. No, you can't complain. Yes, I know it pretty much defined your spec in Antorus, but you can't complain because you're so happy about Find Weakness, remember? Good. Of course, the dream with Subtlety is that you'll be able to drop Vigor and go wild with Deep Stratagem, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do that when we're decked out in raid gear or whatever, but right now the lack of energy regen is quite noticeable. But whatever, Subtlety's style is always going to see it do well in single target fights in BfA, but look, it's got new AOE too, like Secret Technique. Huh. Okay, yeah, Subtlety's style means it's always going to do well on single target fights in BfA. Havoc isn't just the newest spec in the game, it's a spec that was built for and around its artifact weapon in Legion. So lots of players were worried that Demon Hunters would be suffering from inferior sequel syndrome in this, their second expansion outing. But I'm pleased to report that overall, Havoc is totally more the Dark Knight than Secrets of the Ooze. That means it's good. It's still fast and frenetic, you can still make jumping and charging and generally being ridiculous an intrinsic part of your rotation, and you should definitely do that, by the way. Even though on the face of it, with no artifact abilities baked in, and with a much lower Fury recap, it might seem like this spec has had its wings clipped, but there's a couple of ways that Havoc stays enjoyable. You still build with Demon's Bite and spend with Chaos Strike, but that attack now has a 40% chance to refund Fury rather than being based on crit, so you get the use out of that ability that would have taken pretty optimized gear to enjoy in Legion. But it's in the talents that Havoc really nails it. The new additions to the tree and the way the old ones have been mixed up gives a great sense of just having a lot of fun toys to play with, which is exactly how talents should feel. You can have Immolation Aura and be proper fiery like a proper demon and have another reason not to take Demon Blades, which is always a win. You can go full on laser, you can enjoy the massive OP visual glory of Fell Barrage, you can give yourself mini damage windows on a short cooldown with Dark Slash or with Momentum. It all feels pleasingly pick and mix. It's a really nice, elegant piece of modern MMO design, and I think we'll be seeing a lot of them in BfA, and especially because it's more than capable of dishing out some pretty serious Mythic Plus DPS alongside its raid output. Talk about an identity crisis. Survival Hunter was a completely new spec in Legion, and it is just about a whole new spec in Battle for Azeroth too. But have Blizzard made a spec that players can really get their teeth into like they never quite did with the Legion version? Well, they might just have, you know. It's a simple 4-button approach. Kill command builds focus for your main spender Raptor Strike. Aside from that, just keep Serpent Sting up, have fun with grenades on cooldown, and that's about it. But there are a few twists in there, like twist number 1, all those abilities except Serpent Strike work at range too. Use Aspect of the Eagle and all of those abilities, including Serpent Strike, can be used at range, which instantly gives survival options over and above the kit of any other class in this video. The only problem is, of course, that you'll never use your abilities at range, because if you want to do that, you can't use your awesome Harpoon, and to be clear, you are always going to want to use your Harpoon. I've got a feeling that talent choices for survival aren't quite as varied as they look at first glance, though. I really wouldn't want to try playing without Alpha Predator's extra charge of Kill Command, for example. I can see most of its raid DPS being based around extending the damage window of Coordinated Assault with the Birds of Prey talent, but hopefully the meta turns out to allow plenty of chances to use these much more interesting talent, like Wildfire Infusion and having lots of fun with grenades, or traps, or oh look, there's Mongoose Bite. Will this be enough to get people playing this largely neglected spec? They will be rewarded with a quirky, fun spec. Oh, Fury Warriors, how the tables have turned. For so much of Alpha, you were all so worried about your spec. Oh, the global cooldown changes are going to destroy it. No one loves us. This spec is dead. Ian ate my hamster. But oh, how wrong you were. Apart from Ian eating your hamster, sorry about that. Because Fury isn't just alive and kicking in Battle for Azeroth. It is winning. It is so much winning. Winning and spinning. First things first, this spec is simple, it's direct, and it is fast, even in bad gear. Your rotation is basically just building up rage as quickly as possible to knock out a rampage, unload as much damage as possible into the 4-second enrage window as that gives you, and then do it again. Bloodthirst can enrage you outside of that too, but honestly, it doesn't matter because that bar fills up quicker than the comments section of a political Facebook post. Talent into Endless Rage, which is the effect from your BIS Legion legendary, and Meat Cleaver, and you'd be forgiven for forgetting that you even have a resource bar. You'll be too busy spinning and winning. This spec is exactly what a Fury Warrior should be. It has the talents for single target, but to see it as the universe intended, it has to be whirlwinding through tightly packed dungeon corridors where it is absolutely joyous. And we totally rate it as the most fun melee DPS spec in Battle for Azeroth. Or rather, joint most fun along with... Yes, I know, I can hardly believe it either, but genuinely, we've been having an absolute ball with both of these melee warrior specs, and for different reasons, because where Fury is all about spinning and winning, Arms is, well, it's all about spinning too, but really, it's about beautiful, elegantly stacked cooldowns and abilities. And it goes like this. My least favourite damage window cooldown in the game, Colossus Smash, has been stripped down to a one-time button press every 45 seconds, which is one major headache of Legion Arms play gone, straight off the bat. Every 90 seconds, Blade Storm comes off cooldown, so basically your rotation is a priority system of Mortal Strike, Overpower, and Slam, hit something with Colossus Smash, or even better, Talent Warbreaker and hit lots of things, and then spin, win, loot, and repeat. Dropping another Warbreaker exactly halfway through the Blade Storm cooldown on the way. These CDs line up so perfectly that they help to form a satisfying core of a rotation that is then tweakable with some really logical talents, like one that makes Mortal Strike reduce the cooldown on Colossus Smash and Blade Storm, which is frankly spoiling us. It's smooth, there's never any rage issues, use, and it feels impactful. The badass execute phase is present and correct, and maybe the best thing of all, there's no fiddly, focused rage detracting from what's fun about arms. Sometimes less really is more. So there you have it, Internet. Our verdict on the melee DPS specs of World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. If there are any major changes from what we've shown here before release, we'll put updates in the description below, but what do you think? What spec are you rolling? How is your lifelong main faring? And what have Blizzard got completely wrong, and why have they ruined the game? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our YouTube buddy LiveShowFieldy for his pro footage, link below, and as always, our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make these videos happen, which is frankly no mean feat this week because we're getting married this week, so this one's for you, friends. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Signs of Kalani. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evitel. Until next time, cheerio.